What if the story of the universe was not born in silence, but in whispers of gods and shadows of eternity? What if before the first city rose, before the first king carved his laws into stone, before even mankind learned fire, the cosmos was alive with beings whose passions were thunder and whose breath was storms? This is not history in the way we write chronicles of kings or emperors. This is older. This is mythic history, the first attempt of humanity to explain existence. In Greece, the cradle of philosophy and drama, the myths were not only tales told around hearth fires, they were the heartbeat of culture, the architecture of thought, the sacred explanation of how everything came to be. Greek mythology is a river, beginning in the unshaped void of chaos, flowing through the reigns of titans, surging in the thunder of Olympians, and finally branching into the adventures of heroes whose blood was half divine. It ends not with silence, but with echoes, echoes that shaped Rome, Christianity, Renaissance art, modern psychology, and the very archetypes by which we still tell stories. To walk through this mythology chronologically is to witness the universe itself being born, gods rising and falling like empires, and mortals striving in the space between fear and glory. It is to stand where time itself was a god, where fate was a loom of unbreakable thread, and where every constellation in the night sky was once a tale of love, vengeance, or sacrifice. And so, we begin where all begins, with chaos. In the beginning, there was no earth beneath the feet, no heaven overhead, no ocean, no light. There was only chaos. Not chaos as mortals know it, noise, confusion, disorder, but a vast, yawning chasm, a void pregnant with possibility. Chaos was not empty. It was the fertile nothingness, the womb of creation. From this shadowy expanse emerged the first beings, formless yet eternal. Nyx, the goddess of night, her wings blacker than Erebus, embodiment of deep darkness. Aether, the bright upper air, born when night and darkness mingled. Hemera, radiant day, who chased her mother Nyx across the sky. Thus, the eternal cycle of night and day began, long before sun and moon had names. Time itself was alive, weaving motion out of the void. But chaos had more children. From its depths came Gaia, the earth, solid and eternal, the mother of all. Where Nyx was shadow and mystery, Gaia was substance and strength. She stretched herself wide, creating mountains and valleys, laying the foundation for all that would exist. Beside Gaia emerged Tartarus, the abyss beneath the world, a pit of punishment and eternal shadow. In the farthest reaches, he would become the prison of the defeated. And born too was Eros, not the playful Cupid of later tales, but primordial desire itself, the cosmic force that draws being to being, the energy that makes creation multiply. Without Eros, nothing would unite, nothing would be born. This was the first family of existence, night and darkness, earth and abyss. Gaia was vast, but she was alone. In her longing, she gave birth to Uranus, the sky, a dome of shimmering stars and boundless blue. Uranus wrapped himself around Gaia, covering her with his embrace. Earth and sky were joined forever, their union the first marriage of creation. Together, Gaia and Uranus birthed might, the Titans, 12 in number, immense and powerful, each ruling a cosmic domain. Among them were Oceanus, Hyperion, Theia, Mnemosyne, Phoebe, Tethys, Crius, Themis, and the youngest, Cronus. The Cyclopes, one-eyed giants with the gift of forge and thunder. The Hecaton chairs, monstrous beings with 100 hands and 50 heads, embodiments of raw chaos. But Uranus, gazing upon his children, felt fear. They were too strong, too strange, too dangerous. In his dread, he forced them back into Gaia's womb, deep into her body, burying them in darkness. Gaia groaned with pain and anger, crushed beneath her imprisoned children. Her heart burned with rage, and she plotted rebellion. Gaia forged a weapon from her own essence, a sickle of sharp adamant, gleaming with the power of the earth itself. She called upon her children to rise against Uranus. But one by one, the Titans faltered. None dared confront their father except the youngest, Cronus. Ambitious, cunning, and merciless, he agreed. That night, when Uranus descended to embrace Gaia, Cronus ambushed him. With a single stroke, he castrated his father, severing the sky's power. Uranus's blood spilled across the earth, and from it were born terrible and wondrous beings. The Erinyes, Furies, spirits of vengeance who punished oath breakers. The giants, fierce beings of war. The Meliae, nymphs of the ash tree, mothers of warriors. And from the sea foam that rose around Uranus's severed flesh, floating upon the waves emerged Aphrodite, goddess of love, beauty, and Cronus cast Uranus aside and declared himself ruler of the cosmos. Thus began the age of the Titans. With Uranus dethroned, Cronus and his siblings ruled. This was the golden age of mortals, when the earth gave food without toil, rivers flowed with abundance, and men lived without sorrow or old age. They knew neither war nor law, for justice was unnecessary in a world without strife. Yet even in peace, shadows stir. Cronus took his sister Rhea as queen, and together they bore children: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, and Zeus. But a prophecy haunted Cronus. Just as he had overthrown Uranus, so too would one of his own. Terrified, Cronus devoured each child as they were born, swallowing them whole. Rhea wept, her arms empty, her womb betrayed. At last, when Zeus was born, Rhea could bear it no more. She wrapped a stone in swaddling clothes and gave it to Cronus, who swallowed it in ignorance. Zeus was hidden away on the island of Crete, raised in secret by nymphs and fed on the milk of the divine goat Amalthea. His cries were drowned by the clash of the Curetes, warriors who banged their shields to hide the infant's voice. In secrecy, the future king of gods grew strong. When Zeus came of age, he returned to challenge his father. With cunning, he gave Cronus a potion that forced him to vomit forth his swallowed children. One by one, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon emerged, fully grown, divine, and furious. United, they declared war on the Titans. The battle shook the cosmos. For 10 years, the Olympians and Titans clashed, neither side yielding. The earth quaked, the heavens burned, the seas boiled. But Zeus freed the Cyclopes and Hecatoncheires from their imprisonment in Tartarus, and in gratitude, they gifted weapons of power. To Zeus, the thunderbolt, supreme weapon of the sky. To Poseidon, the trident. Which to Hades, the helm of invisibility, cloak of shadows. Armed with these, the Olympians turned the tide. The Hecatoncheires hurled mountains, burying the Titans beneath their fury. At last, Cronus and his siblings were defeated, bound in chains, and cast into Tartarus, guarded by the 100-handed giants. The age of the Titans ended. The age of the Olympians had begun. The war of gods and Titans was over, but the universe was still trembling. The mountains stood where they had been hurled, rivers carved new paths, and the sky itself bore scars of lightning. At the heart of it all stood Zeus, youngest of Cronus' children, now king of the cosmos. Zeus was unlike his father. Where Cronus had ruled through fear and suspicion, Zeus envisioned order. His thunderbolt was not only a weapon, but a symbol of justice. He would be the protector of oaths, the punisher of hubris, and the guardian of cosmic law. But power was never his alone. He called his brothers Poseidon and Hades. Together, they cast lots to divide the realms of creation. Zeus drew the sky and heavens, Poseidon claimed the sea, Hades received the underworld, the earth itself was left as a common domain shared by all. Thus the three brothers formed the cosmic trinity, sky, sea, and death, and with this division the rule of the Olympians began. High above the mortal world, hidden by clouds, lay Mount Olympus. It was no ordinary mountain, but a shining palace where the gods held council. Here they dined on ambrosia, drank nectar, and lived in immortality. One by one, the Olympians took their Zeus, king of gods and men, Hera, his queen, goddess of marriage, ever watchful and ever wrathful, Poseidon, lord of the oceans, quaker of the Demeter, goddess of the harvest, who made the fields bloom, Hestia, goddess of the hearth, keeper of sacred fire, Athena, born from Zeus's head, fully armed, goddess of wisdom and war, Ares, god of bloodshed and valor, embodiment of the battlefield, Hephaestus, master smith, crippled but brilliant, Aphrodite, born of the sea foam, goddess of beauty and desire, Hermes, fleet-footed messenger, trickster, and guide of souls, Apollo, radiant god of light, prophecy, and music, Artemis, his twin goddess of Dionysus, god of wine, ecstasy, and transformation. The Olympian family was vast, complex, and volatile. They loved, quarreled, betrayed, and reconciled. Unlike distant deities of other cultures, the Greek gods were mirrors of humanity, their passions magnified to divine scale. But peace was short-lived. Gaia, still grieving the defeat of her Titan children, rose once more in fury. From her depths, she birthed Typhon, a monster beyond imagining. His body towered to the heavens, his 100 heads spat fire, his wings blotted the sky, his voice was a cacophony of the gods trembled. Some fled to Egypt, hiding in animal forms, giving rise to strange hybrid myths, but Zeus stood his ground. With thunderbolts blazing, he faced Typhon in a battle that shook the universe. For days they fought lightning against flame, storm against chaos. At last, Zeus cast Typhon beneath Mount Etna, burying him forever. Yet his rage still tremors as volcanic fire, reminding mortals of the god's greatest victory. No sooner had Typhon been defeated than Gaia birthed another rebellion. The giants, towering warriors who sought to storm Olympus. The gods, though mighty, could not win alone. A prophecy declared that victory would only come with the aid of a mortal. That mortal was Heracles, son of Zeus. With his bow, he struck down Alcyoneus, leader of the giants. The gods rallied, and together with Heracles, they ended the revolt. Thus, the Gigantomachy cemented the order of Olympus, proving that the line between divine and mortal was forever entwined. In the golden halls of Olympus, Zeus sat enthroned beside Hera, his sister and queen. Their union was meant to symbolize cosmic harmony, sky and sovereignty bound together. Zeus, insatiable, pursued goddesses and mortals alike, fathering children who would shape myth itself. Hera, goddess of marriage, raged with jealousy. Unable to strike Zeus, she turned her vengeance upon his lovers and offspring. Io wandered the earth as a cow, tormented by a gadfly. Semele was burned by Zeus's true form. Heracles, greatest of heroes, was hounded his entire life by Hera's wrath. And yet Hera was not merely jealous. She was regal, powerful, and cunning. When she conspired with Poseidon and Athena to bind Zeus, it nearly succeeded. Only the 100-handed Briareus, summoned by Zeus, saved him. Hera was punished, yet her influence never waned. Their quarrels defined Olympus, a court not of serene divinity, but of passions as fiery as those of mortals. If Zeus ruled the sky, Poseidon ruled the sea. With his trident, he could stir storms, shatter rocks, and sink fleets. Sailors prayed to him before voyages, for his temper was as shifting. He fathered horses, majestic creatures born from sea foam, and earthquakes were said to be his stomps of fury. Yet Poseidon was also builder and protector, raising walls of Troy for King Laomedon, only to destroy them when betrayed. In every myth, Poseidon was the unpredictable force of nature, sometimes savior, sometimes destroyer, but always necessary. Far beneath the earth, in the shadowed halls of Hades, lay the underworld. Unlike later conceptions of hell, it was not a place of punishment alone, but of order. Every soul, great or humble, descended here. The underworld was divided, the Elysian fields where heroes dwelt in bliss, the asphodel meadows where ordinary souls wandered, and Tartarus where the wicked and the titans were punished. Hades, stern and unyielding, was no villain. He kept the balance of life and death, ensuring the cycle continued. Yet mortals feared his name, avoiding it lest they summon misfortune. With his queen, Persephone, he ruled silent. Even as the gods secured their reign, one titan defied them. Prometheus, forethinker, pitied mankind who shivered in darkness and ignorance. But against Zeus's will, he stole fire from Olympus and gave it to mortals, sparking civilization itself. Zeus's wrath was swift. Prometheus was chained to a rock in the Caucasus, and each day an eagle devoured his liver, only for it to grow back by night. Yet Prometheus endured, a symbol of rebellion and progress, and one day Heracles would set him free. But Zeus also punished mankind for receiving fire. He commanded the creation of Pandora, the first woman, gifted with beauty, charm, and cunning. She carried a jar, later called a box, which, when opened, released all the evils of the world: disease, sorrow, toil, leaving only hope trapped inside. Thus, the Olympian age began not only with triumph, but with struggle between gods and mortals. The reign of the Olympians had brought order to the cosmos, but their power was not confined to Olympus alone. They reached down into the mortal world, shaping kings, guiding cities, and most often through desire, creating children who were neither fully mortal nor fully divine. These children became the heroes of Greece. Unlike the titans or the gods, their tales belonged to men. They were born of struggle, lived with human pain, and yet carried divine fire in their veins. Their victories were won not only with swords, but with endurance, wit, and sacrifice. For the Greeks, these heroes were the bridge, proof that mortals could achieve greatness even if at a terrible cost. The first of these great heroes was Perseus, son of Zeus and Danae. His story begins with prophecy. Acrisius, king of Argos, was warned that his grandson would one day kill him. To escape fate, he locked his daughter Danae in a bronze chamber, away from all men. But Zeus, desiring her, came in the form of golden rain, falling through the roof into her lap. From that union, Perseus was born. Terrified, Acrisius cast mother and child into the sea in a wooden chest, but they survived and washed ashore on the island of Seriphos. As Perseus grew, he was tasked with an impossible quest by King Polydectes to bring back the head of Medusa, the Gorgon whose gaze turned men to stone. The gods aided him. Hermes gave winged sandals, Athena a polished shield, and Hades his helm of invisibility. Perseus sought out the Graiae, three sisters who shared a single eye and tooth, and forced them to reveal Medusa's lair. In the cavern of the Gorgons, Perseus crept silently. He dared not look directly, using Athena's shield as a mirror. With a swift strike, he severed Medusa's head. From her blood sprang Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysaor, a warrior of golden blade. Armed with Medusa's head, Perseus turned enemies to stone, rescued Andromeda from a sea monster, and fulfilled his destiny. Returning home, he accidentally killed Acrisius with a discus, proving that prophecy cannot be escaped, only fulfilled. Perseus' tale became the model of heroic myth, divine aid, monstrous challenge, triumph, and tragic fate. But no hero cast a longer shadow than Heracles, Hercules to the Romans. Son of Zeus and the mortal Alcmene, he was marked by Hera's hatred before he could walk. She sent serpents to his. As a man, Heracles was famed for his unmatched strength, yet also cursed by tragedy. Driven into madness by Hera, he slew his own wife and children. To atone, the Oracle of Delphi ordered him to serve King Eurystheus and complete 12 labors, each impossible, slay the Nemean lion, whose hide could not be, destroy the Lernaean hydra, regrowing heads with every capture the Cyrenian hind, sacred to Artemis, capture the Erymanthian boar, clean the Augean stables in a single day, slay the Stymphalian birds, bronze-beaked and deadly, capture the Cretan bull, steal the mares of Diomedes, man-eating horses, obtain the girdle of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons, capture the cattle of Geryon, a giant with 3 bodies, steal the apples of the Hesperides, guarded by Ladon the dragon, bring back Cerberus, the hound of Hades. Through these labors, Heracles endured trials of strength, cunning, and humility. He became the ultimate symbol of human resilience. Yet his life ended in pain, poisoned by a robe sent by his wife Deianira. He burned alive on a pyre. Zeus lifted him to Olympus, granting him immortality. Heracles embodied the paradox of the hero, suffering and glory intertwined. If Heracles was the hero of strength, Theseus was the hero of intellect and justice. Born of Aegeus, king of Athens, he chose to travel to his father not by sea but by the perilous land road, defeating bandits, and Athens at the time was cursed. Each year, it sent 14 youths to Crete, tribute to King Minos, where they were devoured by the Minotaur, a beast half man, half bull, imprisoned in the labyrinth. Theseus volunteered to end the terror with the help of Minos' daughter Ariadne, who gave him a ball of thread to retrace his steps. He entered the labyrinth. In the darkness, he confronted the Minotaur and slew it, freeing Athens from bondage. Yet his story was tinged with sorrow. On returning, he forgot to change the sails of his ship from black to white. His father, believing him dead, cast himself into the sea forever, named the Aegean in his memory. Theseus became not only a hero but a founder, shaping Athens as a city of reason and justice. Another epic unfolded with Jason, rightful heir of Iolcus, who sought the golden fleece, symbol of kingship. Gathering heroes aboard the ship Argo, Heracles, Orpheus, Atalanta, he set sail into legend. Their voyage was filled with perils, the harpies who tormented Phineus, the crashing Symplegades, clashing rocks, and the fire-breathing bulls of Colchis. Jason succeeded only with the aid of Medea, a sorceress who betrayed her father to help him. But their tale ended in tragedy. Jason abandoned Medea, and in vengeance, she slew their children. Thus, the Argonauts' triumph was shadowed by the cost of betrayal. Perseus, Heracles, Theseus, Jason, all different, yet all bound by the same rhythm. A divine or fated birth. Trials that tested body and soul. Triumph against impossible odds. A tragic flaw of fate that undid their peace. For the Greeks, this was not contradiction but truth. Heroes were not perfect, they were mortal, bound by suffering. Their greatness came not from avoiding tragedy but from enduring it. The age of heroes was thus a mirror of humanity, magnified by divine fire. It began not with swords, but the sea goddess Thetis was to marry the mortal king Peleus. To honor the union, all gods were invited to Olympus's golden feast, save for Eris, goddess of strife. Furious at the slight, Eris arrived unbidden, and from her hand fell a golden apple inscribed, "To the fairest." 3 goddesses claimed it: Hera, queen of gods; Athena, goddess of wisdom and war; and Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty. Unable to settle the quarrel, they turned to a mortal to judge: Paris, prince of Troy. Each sought to bribe. Hera offered dominion over kingdoms. Athena offered victory in war. Aphrodite offered the love of the most beautiful woman on earth. Paris chose Aphrodite. With that choice, he sealed the fate of Troy. The woman promised was Helen, queen of Sparta, wife of Menelaus. Her beauty was said to rival the gods themselves. Under Aphrodite's spell, Paris journeyed to Sparta, where he was welcomed. But he betrayed hospitality, taking Helen with him back to Troy. Menelaus was outraged. He turned to his brother Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, and invoked the oath sworn by all Helen's former suitors to defend her marriage. Across Greece, kings and heroes gathered. Odysseus, master of cunning; Ajax the great, tower of strength; Nestor, wise elder; Diomedes, fierce and daring; and above all, Achilles, son of Thetis, fated to be the greatest warrior alive. 1,000 ships launched across the Aegean. Greece sailed. Troy stood proud, its walls said to be built by Apollo and Poseidon themselves. King Priam ruled with dignity, and his sons were famed. Hector, noble defender, devoted to his wife Andromache and infant son Astyanax. Paris, whose beauty hid Deiphobus, Helenus, Troilus, and many others destined for sorrow. The Trojans had allies across Asia, and more importantly, the gods themselves were divided. Hera, Athena, and Poseidon favored the Greeks. Aphrodite, Apollo, and Ares sided with Troy. Zeus, bound by fate, sought to balance the scales. Thus, the war became not only mortal but divine. For 9 years, the Greeks besieged Troy, but the city held. The turning point came when pride clashed with pride. Agamemnon, in arrogance, seized a maiden from Achilles. Insulted, Achilles withdrew from battle, refusing to fight. Without their greatest warrior, the Greeks faltered. The Trojans pressed forward, and Hector shone like a blazing star. The Greek ships themselves seemed doomed to flame. In desperation, Achilles' beloved companion Patroclus donned his armor and led the charge. He fought valiantly, but Hector struck him down. When news reached Achilles, his grief became fury. His cries echoed across the sea, and even the gods trembled. Forged with new armor by Hephaestus, Achilles returned to battle. He clashed with Hector outside the Scaean gates, and with merciless might he slew him. In his rage, Achilles dragged Hector's body behind his chariot, desecrating Troy's noblest son. Only the tearful plea of King Priam, who kissed the hands that killed his son, moved Achilles to return the body. The war was a graveyard. Ajax the Great denied Achilles' armor, fell into madness, and took his. Diomedes wounded gods themselves, striking Ares and Aphrodite. Odysseus proved his cunning, devising stratagems that outwitted even Achilles, though unmatched in battle, met his fate. Paris, guided by Apollo, shot an arrow that pierced his heel, the one place left unprotected by Thetis' river blessing. The prophecy was fulfilled. The greatest of heroes would die young, his glory immortal. Even after 10 years, Troy stood unconquered. At last, the Greeks built a massive wooden horse hollow within and left it as a supposed offering of surrender. The fleet sailed away in feigned retreat. The Trojans, jubilant, debated the horse. Cassandra, cursed prophetess, warned against it, but none believed her. The priest Laocoon cried, "Beware Greeks bearing gifts!" and was slain by serpents from the sea. The horse was brought into the city. That night, Greek warriors emerged, opened the gates, and the fleet returned. Troy burned. Priam was slain upon his altar. Andromache was dragged away in chains, her infant son hurled from the walls. Cassandra was seized, her prophecies silenced. Helen, the cause of it all, was Troy, jewel of Asia, was no more. The Greeks had won, but their victory was poisoned. Agamemnon returned home only to be murdered by his wife Clytemnestra. Menelaus wandered long, tormented by storms. Ajax the Lesser, who defiled Cassandra, was struck down by Odysseus began his cursed journey, which would last another 10 years. Aeneas, carrying his father on his back, fled the burning city with survivors destined to found a new people in Italy. The Trojan War was not triumph but tragedy, a tale of pride, vengeance, and fate. For the Greeks, it was the turning of an age. The heroic era, filled with gods walking among men, drew to its close. Mortals would never again shine so brightly, nor fall so terribly. The fall of Troy did not bring peace. The Greeks, though triumphant, were cursed. Their ships were scattered by storms, their kings met bitter fates. The gods, angered by arrogance and sacrilege, ensured that the homeward journeys would be as tragic as the war itself. Agamemnon, commander of the host, returned to Mycenae, yet his queen, Clytemnestra, had not forgotten the sacrifice of their daughter Iphigenia. With her lover Aegisthus, she murdered Agamemnon in his bath. Thus began the bloody saga of the house of Atreus. Menelaus, who reclaimed Helen, wandered through Egypt and distant seas, learning from the shape-shifting Proteus how to appease the gods. In the end, he returned to Sparta, but his marriage to Helen was forever haunted by betrayal. Ajax the Lesser, who violated Cassandra in Athena's temple, was struck down by a storm, his ship shattered, his body dashed against the rock. The victors of Troy carried not triumph, but no tale of return was more enduring than that of Odysseus, king of Ithaca. Clever, eloquent, and beloved of Athena, he had devised the wooden horse. But Poseidon, angered by Odysseus's blinding of his son, the Cyclops Polyphemus, for 10 long years Odysseus wandered, enduring trials that tested wit as much as strength. The Lotus Eaters, where his men tasted fruit that erased memory, forgetting home until dragged away by foe. Polyphemus the Cyclops, whom Odysseus blinded with a burning stake after tricking him with the name Nobody. As they fled, Odysseus revealed his true name in pride, and Poseidon's wrath was seized. Circe the Enchantress, who turned his men into swine, with Hermes' help, Odysseus resisted her magic, and she became his ally, guiding him to the underworld. The Sirens, whose deadly songs lured sailors to their deaths. Odysseus plugged his crew's ears with wax, but tied himself to the mast so he could hear their song and live. Scylla and Charybdis, a 6-headed monster and a whirlpool between which Odysseus steered, losing men but saving his ship. The island of Helios, where his crew, starving, ate the sun, God's sacred cattle. Zeus punished them with a storm, drowning all but Odysseus. At last, after shipwreck and despair, he washed ashore on the island of Calypso, who loved him and offered immortality. Yet Odysseus longed only for home. The gods relented, and he returned to Ithaca, disguised as a beggar. There, he found his palace overrun by suitors courting his faithful wife Penelope. With his son Telemachus, Odysseus slaughtered them all, reclaiming his throne. The Odyssey was not merely a tale of travel, but of endurance, loyalty, and the endless human years. The curse of the Atreides did not end with Agamemnon's death. His son Orestes, commanded by Apollo, avenged his father by killing Clytemnestra. But for this act of matricide, he was pursued by the Furies, spirits of vengeance. Orestes fled across Greece, tormented, until at last he sought refuge in Athens. There, Athena herself intervened. A trial was held, the first trial of men and gods, and Orestes was acquitted. The Furies appeased, became the Eumenides, the kindly. This myth marked a turning point. The shift from endless cycles of vengeance to the birth of. While Greece descended into tragedy, Troy left its own legacy. Aeneas, son of Anchises and Aphrodite, escaped the burning city, carrying his father upon his back, his son Ascanius at his side. Guided by the gods, Aeneas wandered like Odysseus across seas and strange lands. He visited Carthage, where Queen Dido fell in love with him. But bound by fate, he abandoned her, and in despair she took her life, cursing his descendants, a curse Rome believed fulfilled in the wars with Carthage centuries later. At last, Aeneas reached Italy, where his descendants would found Rome. Through his journey, the myths of Greece became the seed of Roman destiny. One by one, the great heroes vanished. Perseus, Heracles, Theseus, Achilles, Hector, Odysseus, Aeneas, all were gone, their tales echoing in poetry and song. The gods themselves withdrew, less present in mortal. The heroic age ended not with a final battle but with silence, as myth gave way to history. Yet the stories endured, passed down by bards, carved into temples, shaping how Greeks saw themselves. To them, these myths were not distant fantasies. They were ancestral memory, lessons about pride and fate, glory and sorrow, courage and tragedy. With the close of the heroic age, the Olympians themselves grew distant. No longer did they stride openly across battlefields or disguise themselves daily among mortals. They still ruled from Mount Olympus, but their voices were softer, their hands less visible. Yet the Greeks did not see this as abandonment. To them, the gods remained eternal, honored in temples, invoked in sacrifices, worshipped in festivals. But their direct interference faded, as if the universe itself had shifted from myth into history. The poets kept the stories alive, but new voices arose. Philosophers who sought deep. Heraclitus saw in the myths allegories of cosmic order, fire, and flux. Plato used myth as parable, weaving tales like the myth of Ur or Atlantis to express ideas of justice and the soul. Euhemerus suggested that the gods had once been great rulers, exalted into divinity through memory. Aristotle and the Stoics read myths as metaphors for natural forces, ethics, and reason. Thus, myth evolved. No longer merely sacred stories, they became vessels of philosophy, tools to explore truth. When Rome conquered Greece, it also inherited her gods. But the Romans reshaped them, fitting them into their own vision of empire. Zeus became Jupiter, Hera became Juno, Poseidon became Neptune, Hades became Pluto, Athena became Minerva. Rome infused Greek myths with discipline and destiny. Where the Greeks saw passion and tragedy, the Romans saw duty and law. Virgil's Aeneid tied Roman greatness to the ashes of Troy, making myth a foundation of empire. Thus, Greek mythology crossed cultures, ensuring its survival through the might of Rome. The myths lived not only in temples but in art, theatre, and song. Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides turned myths into tragedies that explored human frailty. Oedipus, doomed by fate, Medea, consumed by vengeance, Agamemnon's house cursed by blood. Homer's epics became eternal, the Iliad and Odyssey models for every tale of war and journey thereafter. Sculptors carved gods into marble, painters adorned vases with scenes of Heracles, Perseus, or Achilles. Through art, myths became immortal archetypes endlessly reimagined. The gods and heroes endured because they were not just stories, they were symbols of the human condition. So it's authority, justice, temptation. Hera, jealousy, sovereignty, dignity. Athena, wisdom, strategy, reason. Aphrodite, love, beauty, desire. Prometheus, rebellion, progress, sacrifice. Heracles, strength, endurance, tragic suffering. Odysseus, cunning, perseverance, longing for home. Each figure became an archetype, eternal roles we still recognize in literature, psychology, and storytelling today. By the time Christianity rose, temples to the Olympians fell silent. Zeus's thunder was replaced by a new god's voice, and Olympus became memory. Yet the myths never truly died. Monks copied Homer. Renaissance artists painted Apollo, Venus, and Athena anew. Philosophers revisited the myths as allegories. Freud and Jung used Oedipus, Electra, and archetypes to explain the human. In cinema, novels, and modern games, the myths still live endlessly, reborn, retold, reshaped. And so the chronological history of Greek mythology ends not with the silence of forgotten gods, but with their transformation into eternal stories. From chaos to Zeus, from Heracles to Achilles, from Troy to Ithaca, from Greece to Rome, the myths survive because they speak to what we are: ambitious, flawed, passionate, tragic, yet always striving for greatness. The Greeks believed the gods shaped men. But perhaps it was men who shaped the gods, carving their dreams, fears, and hopes into beings of thunder and love. Even now, when we look to the night sky and name constellations for heroes, when we tell stories of power, sacrifice, and fate, we echo the old voices. Greek mythology does not end. It lives. The chronological history of Greek mythology begins in formless chaos and ends in timeless influence. It is both a sacred cosmology and a mirror of humanity. It begins with gods born from nothingness fighting for rule. It rises with Olympians shaping cosmos and mortals alike. It burns with heroes whose courage defines glory and sorrow. It culminates in Troy, where fate and pride consume nations. It lingers in Odysseus' journey, Aeneas' exile, and the fading, and it endures in philosophy, Rome, art, and every story told thereafter. This is not just mythology, it is the first history of imagination, a reminder that every age, from gods to mortals, from heroes to philosophers, has sought to answer the same question: what does it mean to be human beneath the gaze of the